So we are now in the session 3. The topic is international activity and experience in CCUS projects. Personally speaking, at the end I would like to have certain issues be addressed at the end of the conference. Like what is today's recognition of CCUS technologies? What about the funding of such projects? Are in place the appropriate legal and regulatory frameworks? What is the experience from the already implemented related projects? And what about the announced plans for future capture facilities and other related issues? Are there any prerequisites which the private sector is willing to be deployed by the state sector in order to facilitate the whole implementation? I think that we have seen some kind of answers, and we continue today seeking this answer for a field that is a new field. Is a new field for the southeastern region, is a new field for Greece. It's not so new field for Northern Europe. As I have been informed, Dr. Consoli is not going to be with us due to a health problem. So we're going to continue with the rest of speakers. And having said that, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tassos Vlasopoulos. Mr. Vlasopoulos is the CEO of Hellenic Upstream of Hellenic Energy. Mr. Vlasopoulos, you have the floor, either from your seat or from the podium.
I'll stay here. I think we know a lot of people. So, yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tassos Vlasopoulos. I'm the MD, the CEO of Hellenic Upstream, responsible for E&P and CCS within Hellenic Energy. I'd like actually I'll pick up on a number of points that Mr. Dimas actually referred to, and I will describe how and why we are interested in CCS, why we think it's important, what it will take to win in this sector. I think there's going to be another sort of session later on with other speakers from different companies that will actually make probably similar comments and discussions, and they will talk about funding as well. I expect. So Hellenic Energy is, as you know all of you, is primarily a downstream company with a lot of emissions being generated out of its refining, let's say, processes. Therefore, why is Hellenic Energy interested in CCS at this stage? Is because we were looking to explore the possibility of deploying potentially, if it works, with a capture project in one of our refineries. A project that will actually use it will be high density CO2, and therefore we will see where we will need to find future storage for this. Now, we want to think effectively, is CCS something new? Is CCS something new to the industry? I recall 15 years ago, 16 years ago, when I was working for a different employer, I was working for GE at the time, CCS was also a subject that was discussed a lot, but never took off back then. So then we had the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, and people really focused on other things. So do we have some different, let's say, market setting at this moment where we believe CCS is something, a tool that will need to be used in order to be able to be deployed faster? I think that some things have changed. First of all, I think the speed, the acceleration of the energy transition and is actually very different to what it was 15 years ago. It becomes much more, it's a need. It's a critical lever of decarbonization. So this has actually changed. We also see, obviously, a different attitude and willingness, not a lot, but there is some willingness for funding and for the state to discuss ways of actually helping. And we need this to become even, stronger and speedier. Okay, in order to actually create the right environment for the emitters to be able to find solutions for CCS. So, what does it take effectively to get things done? We need to have a market, we need to have the regulatory environment in place, and we obviously need to have the technology. Technology, the capture technology is something which is relatively known, has not been deployed at scale. But I think most people are not worried so much about the technology element or in capture. In the case of Southeastern Europe, the most critical element is the existence of a value chain in place to be able to bring all this together at the same time and ensure that an investment in capture will actually find a solution in storage straight away. These things don't really exist at this moment for a number of reasons. So there is a huge divergence between Northern Europe and Southern Europe. In Northern Europe, in Northwestern Europe, we have plenty of storage facilities in the North Sea, UK part or Norwegian part, Dutch. There are places, a lot of storage. The projects there are primarily integrated, and that makes a big difference. And in Southern Europe, we don't have that. In Southern Europe, unfortunately, we don't have the same, let's say, the number of stores that will ensure some, let's say, flexibility for people to actually transport with logical, let's say, rates. So, key thing and a key bottleneck to deploying this is lack of storage. Okay, so if you look at it from a market standpoint, in Southern Europe there are only two potential projects: the Greek project of Prinos and obviously the project of Ravenna. Is this enough to actually cope with all the potential projects of Southern Europe? No, it's not. Let's be honest, this is not really enough. We need to have more. We need to have some kind of certainty. We cannot be collecting CO2, at a port without really having a destination. So all these things need to be done in a way that they marry together from a scheduling standpoint. And that is a big challenge, in my opinion, of how you develop the industry. What do we need for that? Clearly, we need to have, if we put aside the regulations and the legal and regulatory environment that needs to be defined extremely firmly, there may be ways of doing it, and I'll refer to a couple of points, although I'm not a lawyer to be able to go into this kind of details. Clearly, we need, in order to make things fly, we need support from the state, support from the state in terms of funding to get projects off the ground, and obviously support from the state to get projects, being supported during the operating phase. This is the kind of things that the state needs to get involved. Now, the state can be involved in many either directly or through European, let's say, facilities or different kind of mechanisms to be discussed. This is something to be thought about. In terms of, we need to have clarity about the regulatory environment, about permits, about safety regulation, about whether the compulsion of capture, is it going to become ever, let's say, are you going to be compelled to do that, or is it going to become is free? Who bears the liability for leakage? Type of monitoring, what happens, after the store has been come to its end, its lifetime, who holds different kind of liabilities. These kind of things have not been, let's say, defined at this moment. Are they difficult to be defined? I don't believe they are. I think this is something that can be solved, but they need to become transparent, in my opinion. The other thing that needs to be clear is if we think between Southeastern Europe and Northwestern Europe, most of the activity, as we said, is in Northwestern Europe. But in the UK, it would be extremely expensive to transport from here to the UK. If we put this one to the side, the UK is not open to European emitters if the projects in the UK are actually operating because of funding from the UK government. So a lot of the activity around stores is not really available to emitters of Southern Europe. It's a problem. This is, in my opinion, is a problem. So we believe that hubs will help, okay? And we believe that there has to be some kind of level of collaboration between different parties. And of course, we will expect to see different kind of business models arising, in the transportation phase. But again, everybody's expecting everyone to move first so that they can actually push the projects. I don't want to focus on the funding element at this moment because I think there will be another panel to discuss this later on, and I will stop here for the time being.
Okay. Mr. Vlasopoulos, we thank you very much for that. I don't know if there are some questions. Any questions? Yannis.
Yanni, yeah.
The devil's lamp come now. Okay. My question is, if I understood well, why a big company like yours or other companies, they wait for government funding to develop business or solutions for the CO2 capture or other technologies? If I understood well, probably this is what you said or not. If this is not what you said, sorry.
Yeah, well, actually, I will say, I think this is a very good point. Obviously, there is a big distinction to be made between CCUS and CCS, right? There is a big distinction to be made. If we are looking at CCUS, I'm sure the levels of spending and investment is actually very big, and therefore this kind of level of investment will require certainty about where the future prices of EU ETS will be. So we don't have at this moment that kind of level of certainty. Are we looking to effectively perform a project against X number of euros per ton? I mean, what do we expect? We need to take a position about where the future EU ETS price will be, and that is an unknown. Of course, somebody can work backwards and say, if you are an industrial emitter, if you are a refiner versus being a cement manufacturer, you're going to have different kind of cutoff points above which it will become preferential to invest or not invest. Okay, that's something to be studied by different kind of sectors. The refining business is different to the cement business, I take it. So why do we need to have support from government? We need to have support from government because, first of all, we don't have an integrated project. We have to have a project that we need to have certainty about how much we will be paying for storage, for instance. At this moment, we don't have that certainty. It's not clear. okay, how much this will cost. Where we will be transporting? Will we be transporting in Southern Europe or in Northern Europe? Again, that's not really clear. Is this allowed in the current environment, regulatory environment? No, but we expect the regulatory environment will adjust at some point to make this, to make it work. So the third one is actually the cost of capture. They have these kind of levels of investment, these kind of levels of projects have not been done at scale in the past. Therefore, there is a risk on that particular element. I'm not saying, Yanni, that this will not be done in the future. It will take time to be done to get these things organized. So if we want to accelerate and bring things faster, okay, we will need to have some support for at the beginning of the project and throughout, you know, the lifetime of the project. And in different parts of Europe, you know, in Germany, in Holland, in the UK, there are these kind of support mechanisms throughout the project to be able to give you confidence. Mechanisms that are used also in renewables such as CCFDs, right? I'm just stating this. The other element is if you don't have enough, let's say, there is a question about. This is a question that exists. If you have one store, okay, can this store unit charge whatever they want? Is it an infrastructure project? So are these kind of returns that an infrastructure project will need good returns for the operator of the project? So these things are open for discussion amongst the different kind of stakeholders, in my opinion. I cannot give you a direct answer, but I give you all the reasons why there are risks in the technical element of the project, the financial element, and the operating element. Okay, but everybody thinks at the beginning the risks around the technical, elements of the project.
Cellular people from energy competence sector. The question follows on. If you're asking for support, what kind of support are you asking for? Is it financial support?
Funding.
Primarily.
Primarily funding, yes.
To do what?
To get
the schemes.
One support would be to get the projects, during the pre-investment phase, and also obviously throughout the running of the project. Yes.
But you seem to have questions on the structure of the project.
What do you mean?
Open questions as to what is the tariff, for example. Is it going to be a shared infrastructure? Is it going to be?
We have these questions, but I think this is.
Plenty of questions.
Yes, that's why we we have plenty of questions and we have a lot of risks identified.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're asking for money, how are the questions going to be answered?
Okay, there is obviously, we obviously people, different kind of emitters have got to discuss with different kind of storage, let's say units, right. And I'm sure there is a level of understanding, but in order to firm things up, it's a different thing to have a level of understanding, a different thing to actually get to a point where you're going to take a final investment decision about a project. So there is a long way to go between that phase where we are right now to the phase where we know we can do the project. I'm not so sure whether I satisfy you with my answer, but that's the I can do. Can I bottle of
Any other question?
Is there anybody else?
Okay. Okay. Following the line of Yannis Basias, I would like to say Hellenic Energy has a specific position in the Greek market. They have 4 refineries.
3.
3. And Macedonia? This is the 4th.
3.
3.
It's terminal.
It's terminal. Okay. Plus other facilities. To my opinion, they have to rush into studying and examining the new fields. Hellenic Energy should be the flagship of the Greek energy market. This is my approach. Tassos, what do you think about that?
Well, I don't think we are the only emitters in Greece. There are other emitters, as well. We have, as you said, 3 refineries, 2 in Attica and 1 in Thessaloniki. We will not really. We are studying and exploring solutions of how carbon capture and can actually play a serious let's say, role in our decarbonization effort. That's not the only decarbonization tool that we see in our processes. That's not the only one, but we think is also critical. Whether we are a flagship or not, I think we have a presence in the country that, of course, is recognized. And I'm glad the others see us that way. But we have, as we have announced, from recently, we have, as part of our vision of 2025, a number of other tools that we are using in order to decarbonize our processes. One of which is actually CCS. Others could be production of biofuels, energy efficiency measures, and of course, it has to be said that we are heavily investing in renewables proper, right? Like PV and wind. So we want to increase this kind of presence ourselves.
Okay. Okay, let's move now to our next speaker. The next speaker is Mrs. Stavroula Evangelopoulou. Is coming from International Energy Agency. She's going to be online.
She's there.
Okay.
So, hello.
Welcome. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Okay.
Good afternoon from Paris.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Do you see my screen? Is it fine?
Yes.
Can I go on? Thank you. So, my name is Stavroula Evangelopoulou, and I am working as an energy analyst in the hydrogen sector at the IEA. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me to this workshop organized by IEA and to give me the opportunity to present you the Global Hydrogen Review Report of 2023, prepared by Hydrogen and Alternative Fuels Unit from ETP division at the IEA. In the next couple of minutes, I'm going to give you a summary of the main findings of the report, the different production routes of the low-emission hydrogen production, and the recommendations that the IEA would like to put forward to help the governments, the stakeholders, and the industry to tap into the opportunity that hydrogen offers for the clean energy transition. To start with, I'm going to say something that all of us we are aware of, and this is that the political momentum behind the low-emission hydrogen remains strong today. This is boosted by the climate goals, the energy security, and the new industrial strategies announced by several major economies. However, transforming this momentum around hydrogen into deployment remains still a struggle. On the supply side, hydrogen production remains almost today completely dominated by the unabated fossil fuels, and this has as a result to more than 900 million tons of CO2 emissions that were emitted last year, the year of 2022. The number of the announced projects to produce low-emission hydrogen, according to the research that we do here in IEA, is growing rapidly. And if all the announced projects that we have in our database are going to be realized by the year 2030, the low emission hydrogen that it will be produced is going to be 38 million tons at the global level. However, there are some factors which are holding the developers back from the investing process. These factors are the long entry into force of support schemes, the high inflation observed in the last 2 years, and the little action on stimulating the demand of the low-emission hydrogen. In fact, regarding the demand, the measures to stimulate it have only recently started to attract the policy attention. So far, we have seen a lot of policies on the production side, but on the demand, not so many. In summary, we can still conclude that the low-emission hydrogen remains at the very early stages of development, and here there is a strong need for further work from our side. Electrolyzers are attracting a massive interest, but this is not the only technology for producing low-emission hydrogen. The use of fossil fuels for carbon capture, utilization, and storage can also play a significant role in scaling up the production of the low-emission hydrogen. Taking into account both production routes reported here, the electrolysis and the CCUS technologies, the annual production of the low-emission hydrogen, as I already said, could reach in 2030 the 38 million tons. This number is 50% larger than our estimates that we have done in the Global Hydrogen Review of 2022. Of this total, 28 million tons are based on electrolysis and low-emission electricity, and 10 million tons on projects using fossil fuels with CCUS technologies. When looking at the geographical distribution of the projects, we can observe some striking differences. Electrolysis projects have a bigger geographical diversity, with Europe, Australia, and Latin America leading the announcements, whereas in the case of the projects aiming to use fossil fuels with CCUS, they are much more concentrated, with North America alone accounting of half of the developments, and Europe for nearly 40%. Now, in terms of the maturity, we can also see important differences. There is a larger share of electrolysis projects that are at early stages of development compared to the fossil fuels with CCUS. But when we are going to look at the projects that they are at least undergoing feasibility studies, the total capacity is 60% higher in the case of electrolysis than in the case of projects with fossil fuels and CCUS technologies. Finally, if we are going to have a look in the really mature projects, so the projects that have at least reached an FID, we say that the total share is around 4% of the potential production from the announced projects, including both hydrogen production routes. This share may look small, but in absolute terms, it has been doubled since last year, and now it is reaching around 2 million tons at the global level. The slow progress on the real-world implementation is a consequence of several barriers, such as the uncertainties about the demand, the lack of clarity in regulatory frameworks, a lack of infrastructure to deliver hydrogen to the end users, the increased costs, and the slow policy implementations. Focusing now on the cost challenges, inflation has gripped the global economy since 2022, and this has impacted the economics of hydrogen projects, with several factors being at play here. First of all, the installed costs of the electrolyzers have increased significantly since the past few years due to the increase in the material costs and, of course, in the labor costs. And this has, as a result, to a year-on-year increase of about 9% comparing to 2021. Second, the cost of the inflation also impacts renewable electricity projects, which is the main electricity source for most of the electrolyzer projects. However, the largest cost increase has come for the rise of the cost of capital. According to our analysis, a 3 percentage points increase in the cost of capital raises today the levelized cost of hydrogen production by nearly 1/3. This thing can have impacts on projects that are currently under development, and therefore some hydrogen projects with feasibility studies conducted before the mid of 2022 have now to rework their cost estimates and to reevaluate their financial plans and to accommodate such cost increases. However, this is not expected to be permanent, and with cost rising more slowly at the moment, we hope that the main impact will be on the delays on the final investment decisions of the projects, rather than cancellation of the projects. Let's step now on the topic of the demand, which has a special focus on this year edition of the report. So far, the policy focus has been mainly on the supply side, but without a robust demand, producers of low-emission hydrogen will not secure sufficient off-takers to support the large-scale investments. However, efforts to create demand for low-emission hydrogen have just very recently started to attract the policy attention, as we have already said. Around 7 million tons of demand can be created by policies already in force, and this could increase up to almost 14 million tons by including government targets for demand creation, although most of them are still not supported with concrete policies. The governments and the private sector have launched several international cooperation activities to speed up the development of the clean energy technologies. They could create between 1 to 3 million tons of low-emission hydrogen demand by 2030, according to their announcements. But the real impact of their pledges remains to be seen. The companies have signed off-take agreements for up to 2 million tons of low-emission hydrogen demand, but half of these agreements are still preliminary with no binding conditions. So we see that there is a strong issue here on the demand and on triggering of the demand. To conclude, I would like to highlight some of the policy recommendations that we have outlined in our report. First of all, there is a need for governments to urgently implement the support schemes for the low-emission hydrogen production and use. We need to take bolder action to stimulate the demand creation for low-emission hydrogen, in particularly in the existing hydrogen uses, such as in ammonia sector, in the chemical sector, and of course in the refineries. we need to foster international cooperation to accelerate solutions of hydrogen certification, and particularly to mutual recognition of certificates. We need also to quickly address the regulatory barriers, particularly for projects licensing and permitting. And finally, we need to provide support to the project developers to maintain this momentum, and particularly during this period, which is influenced by the inflation increase. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to discuss further about the report Global Hydrogen Review and to answer to your questions.
Mr. Evangelopoulou, we thank you very much for giving us all this data and information. It is always very good to hear the views and the approaches of this institution, especially of IEA. And I would like to ask the audience if there are some questions for Mrs. Evangelopoulou. Mr. Stefatos.
Yes, I don't know if I'm heard.
Microphone.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear all the questions from the audience before, so I would like to speak on the microphone if it's possible.
Okay.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
I hope you can hear me now.
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
now it's fine.
Okay.
Yes, I just had one question that I wanted to hear how IEA thinks about it. On the last graph, you showed us that there are plans for 35 million tons production, while the firm agreements and contingent commitments are in the order of 3.5 million. And there is a lot of policies in between and incentives, which we all understand, and we hope they will work. But are you doing any risk analysis? What if you cannot bridge these two very critical elements on the policy level? Because it's a tenfold increase relative to what is the market expectation right now.
Yes, I understand your point. Actually, we haven't done this analysis yet. The target of IEA is to track all the projects that are happening, that are announced globally for the low emission hydrogen production and hydrogen-based fuels production, and also all the policies. In this report, we analyze and we focus on the how urgently the governments should act and to promote the demand, the promotion of the low emission hydrogen demand, and to so trigger the demand in order to promote also, so that the investors to feel that they have a secure environment for investing.
Then one more question, if I'm allowed. Have you calculated what would be the cost of these incentives in order to bridge that gap? How much would it cost to the different governments to incentivize an industry which is not very willing, from what we see, to bridge that gap?
No, we don't do this analysis, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Okay. As I have been informed, Mr. Bolesta is not online, so I will ask again if there are some follow-up questions. Yes, over there. Your name, please, also.
Yes, thank you. Stavros Niotis from Primarine. Actually, the question is, because you showed some very nice differences between basically green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. Okay, renewable energy in electrolysis hydrogen and hydrogen with CCS. And since we are in a workshops on CCS, actually the question is, how do you see? I was planning actually to make this question to the next speaker, but since he's not following, how do you see Europe's approach against the blue hydrogen and blue ammonia products, and whether this, if we had any more support, whether this could help into deploying infrastructure for distribution of these fuels or hydrogen and etc., and also the deployment of CCS projects?
Yeah. Hydrogen, as you know, it's easier to be produced by electrolyzers technologies. The electrolyzer projects did not have so many constraints regarding environmental permissions, manufacturing processes, and required infrastructure and local acceptance as the CCUS project. So the steam reforming with CCUS technologies. So Europe can promote easier the electrolyzer projects. There are also announcements regarding also for the infrastructure for transforming the hydrogen, like using the hydrogen backbone. And regarding the CCUS projects, more action should be needed, and also on the funding part, as well as on the permitting part. And the governments should help on this, because especially in the south part of Europe, there should be a very good coordination of the infrastructure, that it is transport of CO2, storage, and of course the capture developments.
Yes.
Yeah, can I make a comment on this one? I totally agree that it has to be a coordinated approach in order to have the infrastructure and storage development for CCUS. But given the fact there are lots of emissions in Southern Europe coming from Spain, France, Italy, and Greece, okay, and lack of storage, CCUS should not be allowed to become, that's probably the best way of describing, a Northern European kind of market only. It's not only for Holland, Denmark, Norway, and the UK, which is actually not in the European Union these days, okay, to be able to do CCUS. So CCUS is something that we believe is needed by, you know, the industrial players, okay. And I'm sure in this room today we have 2 refiners, we have 2 cement manufacturers, and we need to have somewhere to take the CO2, and that is very, very important. And I will close by actually saying, and I'm a bit concerned because I just read, probably I read it not very well, but about 2 days ago I think there was something written, you know, came out from IEA saying, is there a risk that CCUS will not be done, or CCS will not be done in Europe? And probably it's not fair to ask you a question because you were actually presenting something about hydrogen, but these are questions that come out and give some kind of create more stress in this environment. The key, earlier on when I was actually talking about why we need funding, why do we need state support, effectively I was focusing primarily in the areas where we can ourselves control our destiny. You know, there are other risks like the legal and regulatory elements where we don't, these are for others to actually solve. We can actually put out ourselves a view of how this can be done, but this is somebody else's job to do. Okay, so again, the state needs to be involved in a different capacity. Okay.
I would like to make a comment here regarding industry and refineries.
But a short comment, please.
Yes, in the power sector, there are many pathways in order to reach net zero emissions by 2050. So at first, we should invest on all the other issues and all the other solutions, and also at the end to the CCUS technologies. CCUS technologies should not be the first technology that we should have in our mind, because it has a lot of constraints, like storage facilities are limited and the costs are high. We should invest on this technology as well, but this should not be the only option for industry. Industry should invest also in efficiency, in shifting of the fuels and that they use for energy uses, and in new technologies. These are from my side, and thank you again for the invitation.
Okay, we thank you indeed. As a development of the last minute, Mr. Bolesta is on the line, so we are going to have with us Mr. Bolesta.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, but we cannot see you.
I'm trying to.
Okay, you're welcome.
So sorry for being late. Can I share some slides? Would that be okay?
Yes, you have 10 minutes.
Yes, I realize that. I'll be very quick. Okay, so very quickly, what is happening in the European Commission, what we are doing on CCS and CCU, because this is a new missing piece of the Green Deal that we are trying to address. So I think it's worth looking at what the modeling background for the Green Deal was, and it was quite generous for CCS and CCU. In some scenarios that we run in the Commission, even up to 600 million tons of CO2 would be captured in 2050, which is you have to say a very high figure. But this is just for some scenarios. Now we are preparing new model runs, because the curious thing about the Green Deal modeling was that it envisaged precisely 0 tons of CO2 captured in 2030. And now we know that the situation is more dynamic, and there are many projects, including in Greece, and these projects will certainly aim for capturing CO2 before 2030. So this time around, the modeling was less generous to CCS than the reality. Which is quite important to underline in this stage, is that the CCS is not new in terms of the Commission. We looked at this technology before, but it was looked in to help the power sector decarbonize. So mostly for hard coal and lignite power plants to get rid of their emissions. But the power sector is decarbonizing in different ways. And now the focus on CCS and CCU, and this is precisely why the technology is back on the Commission's agenda, is hard to abate sectors, but it's also a bridge to green hydrogen, and it's also carbon removals, industrial carbon removals, so something entirely new. So application of CCS to bioenergy, so non-fossil CO2. We have a number of things happening already in Europe. So the Commission, we co-fund a number of projects around Europe. And you see the yellow stars are the capture projects, and these are the ones that already get funding. But there's also another 12 projects waiting in the line to sign grant agreements, and they are even more spread, because you see that clearly the first wave of projects were clustered around the North Sea, and I've heard that the moderator remarked this fact already. The second wave will be more evenly spread around the EU. And this has to be also said about the projects of common European interest. These are the infrastructure projects, transport infrastructure. And these, we will publish the new list later this year, and there are 18 candidate projects, and there probably will be also quite evenly spread around Europe. We also doing two studies just to see how the infrastructure should develop. So this is the study that we're doing internally, how to best connect sources of emissions and CO2 sinks. So that applies to the whole of Europe, not just the area around the North Sea. Of course, there's more difficult to find good storage locations in the south of Europe, but our modeling doesn't factor that in. It's just the cost of transport between capture sites and storage sites. The second study that's already completed looks into potential regulatory framework that we need in order to arrive at a single market for CO2 transport and storage. So this is what kind of regulations you need in order to have open access network in Europe. We have stakeholder consultations that are also feeding in to what we do on CCS and CCU. We have the CCUS forum, and this is a long-standing setup where stakeholders could join and express their opinions. We have the plenary session of the forum coming in late November, and we had an open public consultation dedicated to what we are working now at the moment, which is industrial carbon management strategy. And the CO2 storage obligation proposal and part of the Net Zero Industry Act. This is a 50 million tons that we would like to see developed by oil and gas industries by 2030. And all this feeds into what we are doing now. So elaborating a strategy for CCS, CCU, and carbon removals. And just to mention five most interesting for this forum, I thought, elements of the strategy. So first, how the network, transport and storage network will be regulated. This will be described in the strategy. Whether we would like to see a certain common quality standards for CO2 stream, what kind of market setup in terms of maybe unbundling of transport and storage, and of course, what comes after the 20 million tons of storage target capacity that we proposed in the Net Zero Industry Act. What comes? What happens with this in the future? Do we need more for 2040, 2050, or we should let this for the market to develop? And of course, how to speed up storage capacity deployment, because we see that this is the main blocking element for the deployment of the whole value chain. Milestones for what we do, public consultation wrapped up last Friday for the strategy. The CCUS forum, so the stakeholder consultation platform plenary, will be held in November, and the registrations are still open on our website. The Net Zero Industry Act will be wrapped up with the target hopefully intact, with the target of 50 million tons of storage capacity first quarter of 24, and the strategy will also be published in the first quarter of 2024. So that was, I hope, my 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolesta, first of all, for being with us and presenting to us all this data. Any questions to Mr. Bolesta? Okay. The microphone, please.
Thank you very much. I'm George Daskalakis from Motor Oil Hellas. One question regarding the Net Zero Industrial Act in regards to the CCU technologies. Just yesterday, a letter from more than 10 industrial associations sent to the Parliament asking for the inclusion of CCU technologies in the Net Zero Industrial Act. The initial response some time ago for not including these technologies which are crucial for both the sustainability and the production of low carbon products was that they do not correspond to manufacturing technologies. Do you think that this thing will be corrected till the Q1 of 2024? Because e-fuels, RFMBOs, are all those things that are coming from CCU technology, Power to X and so on, and they are recognized as a tool for decarbonization by RED II, by the Fuel EU, by the Refuel EU, by all the relative directives and regulations, but still they were not considered as manufacturing technologies by the Net Zero Industrial Act, meaning that do not get any priority. Thank you.
Mr. Bolesta.
Thank you for this question. So the CCU technologies are recognized in the Net Zero Industry Act, but they are not recognized as strategic technologies. The main reason for that was that the CCU technologies are extremely diverse. So it's really difficult to say CCU and have a common understanding what this means. It's just that you could, of course, think that this is about synthetic fuels, but it's also technologies that could mineralize CO2, that could put CO2 in plastic. So there's the whole plethora of different technologies, and it's really, really difficult to actually put them under one umbrella and in this piece of legislation and have an understanding around the table in the Parliament and in the Council to actually understand what everyone means. So that was the main reason. Another reason may have been that some of them are not manufacturing technologies. Whether this will be changed before the law is adopted, I don't know. It's between the Council and the Parliament. The Commission now is at the back seat observing the process. We'll come back to that when the Council and the Parliament agree their positions. So I think this point is still open.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being with us. Another question, yes, sorry. But this is the last question.
Hi. I was interested in your diagram with the sources and the sink dots across Europe, and it's a double question. The first is, at what point of maturity do you count a sink as a sink? And the second question is, given the maturity, the ability to count something as a sink, is there a balance in Europe of sources and sinks?
Thanks. First of all, I would like to remark that the maps you saw, that was the old study, the power sector. So now we we are changing it to serve the hard to abate sectors. So the source nodes will be slightly different. So I will distribute the slides, but let's not attach ourselves to these pictures. How do we assess how the Joint Research Center assesses the storage nodes? So basically, there was a European project called CO2 Stop, and these looked into geological formations suitable to host CO2 storage sites. And so the model actually doesn't look into maturity of the sites. It just looks at geological formations that are suitable for CO2 storage. And depending on the quality in the database, the model assigns flows of CO2 at the lowest cost between the nodes where CO2 is captured and stored. Having said that, we, or JRC, encountered an important problem, which is the comparable data of geological formations across Europe. So, for example, there are countries with really poor geological data, and for that reason, some of the connections might look bizarre, but we will put it once the study is complete. We'll put it for review to the public. So you might want to comment if something comes up really counterintuitive or bizarre. If I think there's enough storage in south of Europe, I think geology wise there is enough. But if it will be developed on time, that I don't know.
Okay, thanks a lot for your participation in this session. And let's move to the next session. Mr. Kukuzash, please take the seat.